Millennials are often blamed for killing this and that, but what are they giving birth to? Story 1. Millennials created everything that everyone likes nowadays, for better and for worse. When we were young adults, millennials got made fun of for artisanal this and craft that. But over a decade later, cultural taste in everything from home decor to the beer you drink has been elevated across the board. Unfortunately, we also invented social media, which may be a net negative for society. We'll see, but at least for now, we can all enjoy the mass acceptance of eating vegetables, avocado toast as shorthand, and not living in dark, cigarette smoke-filled homes as the norm. Story 2. I see the millennials as a gateway or halfway generation. They respected the older generation, yet also saw the need for change. Unable to fully break away, they still strive to enable change and general betterment. They ran that relay and passed the baton to the next generation. I think they gave renewal to a lot of hope, establishing boundaries, engaged fathers, and were generally responsible on the whole, less prone to extremes and more tempered. It revived the seeds of individualism and challenging what was societally acceptable. Story 3. Respecting so-called unskilled workers, like waiters, shop assistants, janitors, etc. That is the people who we rely on for most of our basic needs. The amount of shade I heard growing up thrown on burger flippers or supermarket shelf stackers was unreal. Story 4. Acceptance of all people, regardless of their background, a worldview. Many don't have the same urgency about being traditional, i.e. college, marriage, career, family. They're more open to different ways of living and being. I'm hopeful for them to make good changes in the world. Story 5. As a millennial, 1991, I'd like to just thank all Uyghur folks for attributing so much wonderful stuff to us. And most of all, thank you for fighting those issues alongside us. But I have to say, millennials were inspired by the small few among older generations who could see through bullshit. There were also boomers and Gen X fighting for change. Every generation has people who can see right through the bullshit. We were also spurred by every awful thing we saw happen growing up. The whole climate crisis that was predicted and preventable, and we saw it unfold. Several worldwide economic crises and wars. We were compelled to free ourselves from all that bullshit because it was crystal clear that the old mentality of those in power would be the end of us. We were horrified to grow up and find out that there are no real adults. Just a silly, pretentious game people play. Aging does not necessarily make you wiser. There are lots of people who get pretty damn stupid with age. Nobody knows shit. Education is fucked. Nobody owns shit anymore. Greedy scoundrels rule the world. Governments actually follow the whims of a handful of maniacs while ignoring pretty much all evidence, data, and studies objectively proving their policies to be wrong. And the UN is just for keeping up appearances and ensuring that whoever is at the top stays at the top. Nobody takes responsibility for shit. They're selfish cowards who are quick to point fingers to cover their asses. I guess many of us just couldn't bring themselves to take part in all that bullshit. I think I'm part of a big trend among millennials when I say that, while I always believed and fought all my life for a bunch of stuff, I have a hard time recognizing I can take any credit for it. Many of us struggle with rock-bottom self-esteem and imposter syndrome, so it's refreshing to hear that, thank you again. Story 6. Workers' rights. Seriously, Gen X saw the need but didn't have the numbers. Now all companies are trending very employee-friendly with generous PTO, medical plans that cover more than emergency, mental health, physical fitness, and even nutrition, parental leave, and flexible work schedules. Story 7. Boomer here, and I applaud millennials for this right here. Family-friendly breweries, wineries, and restaurants where the adults can adult and the kids can play. For example, we have local wineries and breweries with play yards and appropriate live music for a family to just chill on a Sunday afternoon. Kids bring soccer balls, or there's cornhole and yard games. Local pizza place has an amazing playscape and tons of brews on draft. When we were raising our kids, we only had McD's with a playscape. Love these new choices to connect as a family. Story 8. Emotionally self-aware next generation. I've always pushed counseling therapy for my kids when they're going through issues. Now my 17-year-old is going through a breakup and he decided on his own to get back into therapy, as well as asked to start going to the gym with me to work off his anger. Story 9. Having cool hobbies and starting new hobbies as an adult. When I met another millennial, or Gen Z, I always start by asking hobbies instead what they do for work. We are doing some cool stuff out there. I've met competitive pole dancers, ceramicists, cosplayers, gardeners, hobbyists, game designers, and so many more. I've also met people that started things like ballet or gymnastics or figure skating as an adult and absolutely killing it. Story 10. Not answering the question, but I just had a moment to think about the fact that when I'm in my middle age, Gen Alpha will be blamed for killing the things I think are good and valuable, and that I should probably get ahead and be ready to second-guess those assertions and where they'll be coming from. Story 11. Maybe not gave birth to, but they have brought back being decent to other people. Boomers are mostly shitheads to anyone that isn't exactly like them. I'm Gen X, and we are indifferent to people, but at least we leave them alone and let people do their thing. Millennials are much friendlier and will help you do whatever you want to do without judgment. Story 12. Eventually, we'll probably birth something the internet will call quiet retirement or something, because it sounds catchier than working as a Walmart greeter into your 70s before shooting yourself next to the woodpile in the basement, because the last 50 years of an unnecessarily low quality of life and constant exhaustion has finally grown unbearable. Story 13. I remember reading this article a few years ago that millennial men are the most attentive generation of fathers, something to that effect. And I totally agree. All my friends that have kids are so overwhelmingly loving and involved with their kids, every single one of them. I'm proud to call these guys my friends. I think for most of us growing up, affectionate fathers were a rarity, if at all they existed. Story 14. Hopefully becoming more open about what is really going on with the deviant population. What I mean by that, as a millennial myself, we have started to take a page from our boomer parents and points out the flaws in our society that was meant to be kept sealed away. We're starting to point out the imperfect society, at least in the USA, we were forced to live under. Some locations are starting to look through the lies the parties are trying to shove down our throats. Note, I'm not just hounding the right wing here because the left are guilty of this as well. Hell, a lot of places are guilty of some form of indoctrination, and most are seeing through the lies. For example, some places are banning book bans on the grounds of tyranny does. Story 15. The AI age. Millennials are older than what people, including us millennials, would like to think. Millennials are everywhere, and probably already driving a lot of the change we see. Where are they not? They're not at the top of the politics anywhere, because of boomer demographics. Story 16. The need for personal development of the individual instead of becoming yes men for the big corporations, employers. Basically creating the cracks in a monolithic work culture where the boss was always right, and where you'd sacrifice yourself, your future, your family, and your potential in order to keep the boss happy and his pockets filled. Millennials started pushing back in this regard and started laying the focus on their own development rather than that of the company. The Zoomers are, as far as I've seen, continuing that push. Something that is needed in today's day and age, not only for an individual's own benefit, but for that of the economy as a whole. There have been too many wasteful positions and money sinks for far, far too long. Story 17. Working remotely. Now, I'm not saying millennials invented it by any stretch. I have an uncle who is an incredibly successful boomer and has worked from home since 1989, but millennials were the first generation to push for hybrid schedules. They were the first to make it feasible considering broadband internet, VPNs, and laptops. At my company, I headed up the push to go remote in a couple of areas. First, by optimizing some processes that were paperwork and felt ancient to me even in the early 2000s, and then convincing managers in another area to let us work 1 day a week, and then 2 days a week remotely. Unfortunately, the executives rebelled against all the progress made once the post-COVID RTO trend started. Now you're either remote, which is rare, or you must come in 4 days per week. So many areas ended up going backwards, but I am convinced that progress is never linear, and that millennials and Gen Z will be the ones to bring it back. It will just be table stakes at some point for employers to attract talent, especially in areas where their home and field office is not in attractive, livable cities. It's just so obvious to millennials and Gen Z, remote is the future. Story 18. Millennials will be our saviors. I'm 37. You ever heard the phrase, good men make good times, and good times make bad men, and bad men make bad times, and bad times make good men? That's us. We're the good men. I know how to do everything because I have to. We're good with tech like boomers because we grew up with having to figure it out. We know how to teach ourselves things and figure it out ourselves. The new kids are invalids even though they were born into it. Gen X are a bunch of whiners. The boomers have all turned into idiots. That's my parents. They're so rich they don't know what to do. Gen X did a shit job raising their kids. The chip on their shoulder is too big. My best friend is in his 50s FYW. Millennials will be the generation that fucking got it done. We will be the generation that turned into Atlas, and we had the world on our shoulders and we didn't give up. Alright, I basically hate everyone my age, but whatever. Fucking tell me I can't and watch what happens. I don't do the word can't anymore. Story 19. The irony. Because they aren't birthing children. A lot of millennials are CF or CL. A lot just realized kids are way too expensive, way too consuming. They know they don't want to raise a kid knowing they aren't fit to parent. Overall, millennials gave birth to a wave of uncomfortably self-aware adults who know their shortcomings intimately. Story 20. I didn't get diagnosed with autism until 25. If my child exhibits any behavior related, I will go get him checked out instead of forcing him to do things neurodivergent, have a huge problem with, or chalking it up to just their personality or shy. I'd say I'm right on the age between millennial Gen Z, but like someone said, boundaries, especially with children. I've cut off my own mother for repeatedly kissing him when asked not to. Sorry, your title to my child does not mean you are entitled. I gave multiple warnings and she completely disrespected and ignored me. So, she will not be around him anymore. All 3 times she did. We got sick within 3 months, PP, so I was done. Also, I will not let my family treat or talk to me however they want, just because they're family. Nope. Respect is a two-way street, and I won't disrespect someone back, but I'll cut them off if communication doesn't work. And 3, communication. So many of my family's problems could be solved if we addressed it, instead of shoving it in a closet and just saying it's in the past. We don't need to talk about that. Really? 'Cause you, as my mother, calling me out of my name, still being married to my child molester, slapping me, calling me fat. Yeah, that doesn't matter now, apparently. Story 21. I can't say definitively whether this is a millennial thing or not, but there's a pretty large wave of people trying to get sober right now. I believe it's largely due to the recent years of any drug being cut with fentanyl and people dying in masses from ODs, by choice or otherwise. Again, I can't say for sure that it's US, but there are a lot of folk around my age that are pushing themselves towards sobriety as well as helping the younger generation to do the same before it's too late. Story 22. This thread is making me well up like a fucking baby. I've lately been feeling really shitty about my and my peers' lack of power to do anything to help the worsening condition of our lives and the world. I feel like life is so fucking hopeless every day and getting worse, but not so much after reading this thread. We may not have political power. We may not own homes. A lot of us may not have the financial standing to have children, but we love our partners. We love our friends. We love our hobbies. We love ourselves. If this thread has taught me anything about being a millennial, it's that we are aware of ourselves, the effect we have on others, and the importance of balance despite having little but the trophies our parents gave us, and the false sense of potential that was imbued in us when we were children, incapable of understand the responsibility of handling the world. I know it's not all for me, but I want to thank everyone for making my day, before I even drag myself out of bed, to have what is now going to be a wonderful day with my pets, my friends, and my partner, as the world around me fucking continues to crumble and burn up. Love you fuckers. Keep on loving, keep on fighting. Edit. Words. Story 23. Being comfortable with breaking old and dumb social guidelines. Be married by this age, have kids by this age, or at all, get a good job right out of college or high school. This generation recognizes it's okay to fail and learn from that failure. They're content taking more risks, traveling more, getting out and exploring. By 25, my parents were married, 2 kids, and in jobs. By 25, I was just getting started on what I wanted to do and was having as much fun as I could. Each experience and challenge has taught me something and made me better. Story 24. Boundaries. Going no contact with parents? Acknowledging the cycle of boomer abuse to kids and refusing to do that to our own kids. Unfortunately, we are also giving birth to the most anti-social generation in a while because we raised our kids on tablets and phones, and now teachers are quitting in droves because our kids are actually the most appalling little monsters with no manners and no concept of respect. Story 25. For American millennials, at least, extensive reevaluations of Reagan's and Carter's presidencies. Reagan was on a pedestal amongst most, if not all, conservatives and undecideds. And whilst conservatives still mostly deify him, most of the younger generation now see him as someone who intentionally laid the groundwork for the biggest cash grab by the wealthy since pre-revolution France, and set the nation backwards by decades on social issues, mental health, and physical infrastructure, amongst a litany of other horrifying things he politically did that would turn this into an hours-long post if I were to try starting to list them all. Not to mention the revelations of what a self-serving bitch Nancy was. Whereas Carter is being recognized for what a good and decent public servant he was, how he failed because he didn't want to play the dirty political game. However, That decision left him wide open to be completely sabotaged by the GOP, who intentionally detailed all efforts to fix the economy and actually went under the table to encourage Iran not to release their hostages. Story 26. Atheists have always been frowned upon. We should agree on some shit so we get protections in their courts and have some cops fighting for us. Like weed and cocaine. Can we not have them yet? Some LSD and people would be so much fucking happier living as cattle being farmed for taxes. Watch them take us into another world war to thin the herd. We are getting unruly. They couldn't handle fuck, so we gave them sex, when that made them blush. We gave them X, when that made them horny. We gave them X-rated and mature. Now 15 words bad cause that first was too raw. We couldn't be hippies, hoodies, or punk, so now they have blue-haired kids picking their junk denial of service going so well. Now we all used to this hell. They just can't stop abusing the kids in one way or another, working till they drop, because they don't trust the Hunter Bidens they raised to take us into a new world, criminalizing everything they don't like to see, hear, or smell in their society. So it gets pushed to the edges where they can't see it or us. 99.7% of Congress is affiliated to one religion or another, according to the religious composition of the 117th Congress. And we are the most godless generations. They think we are the ones with mental health problems for breaking from their programming, rejecting their hateful ideals based on prejudices and fear. Give them one excuse to choose violence. Watch how fast these God-fearing Christians will beat you for your own benefit. Cover your shame with a brown paper bag like they do, and the pain might stop. Just hope they don't put you down first. Maybe an acorn spooks them. Or they visit you in the night coming to the wrong house using ARs they needed for bank robbers and body armor. Now they patrol the subways. But you fear a crackhead who can't carry a spoon in public without being harassed. The illusion of freedom, security, and choice, sold to us by the 4 or 5 investment firms that own everything we buy, our politicians, and the legal system. It fights for them, not us. Their fiat Ponzi debt built with our own savings keeping us from achieving our dreams, because they want all the cookies and refuse to share, just like you refuse to share what little you have with migrants or junkies. But we are all just victims of their way of life. They would risk their job to stop their kids getting 1 mark against their permanent record. While giving out 200 a day to other people's kids, they get one taste of the laws and scream to defund the police LOL. Their laws are built on oppression, just half a hop from slavery. Those same prejudices were on their minds when they wrote, "We the people," hell it still is. You import people to pick the crops, and we are all slaves to their debt traps, built on a house of cards. If 3% of the world went to the bank on Monday, their shit stops. Not 1 billionaire would be needed for us to see through their smoke and mirrors. If we just wanted to, I call it a reverse bank holiday, a stress test. Weed is legal here in 7 days. I can't find a landlord that will let me grow for a community. Stigmas will run deep for years, maybe generations before a weed farm is as acceptable as a brewery. Man, I'd hate to try if my skin was a little darker. I'm a foreigner as it is, with enough savings to build an empire from nothing. But no one will invest in my dreams, so I'm gonna have to lie to their faces and tell them what they want to hear. Everyone wants to be lied to. No one respects brutal honesty. You come across as an asshole in a world that's not used to it. I don't want to waste my time playing in the background here. People can't handle a fat lip. All American rejects gives you hell is another I have to play. It says their story perfectly. 99% of laws exist to stop us being their neighbors, taking back our potential they stole in a war on our humanity.